But today, a group of former Trump staffers got together to try to make sure of one thing and one thing only, that Donald Trump never holds public office again. Those former Trump employees, including former White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham, former communications director for about 6 seconds, Anthony Scaramucci, and others, they just wrapped up their meeting to take on that imperative, important, and some would say gargantuan task. Let's bring in one of the meeting's attendees, friend of the show, Miles Taylor, former chief of staff for DHS, and now the co-founder and executive director of the Renew America movement. Miles, it's good to see you here. What's the readout you can give us from the meeting? How did it come together? What happened? And how optimistic are you about it working now? Miles, you're on mute, I believe. You're going to have to unmute yourself if we're going to hear you. There he goes.
That's fantastic, John. That happens to everyone in their work phone calls, but rarely do you get to do that on cable television. So
hopefully they can hear you. Hopefully your voice was not muted in the meeting. That's what I want to make sure you were able to be heard.
There you go. I appreciate it, John. Look, here's the big picture. I've got to respect the confidentiality of the other folks who were in the room in that meeting. But I'll tell you this. It was more folks than we anticipated. I believe last week you all had mentioned that there was probably 15 or so former officials getting together. We had more than 36 former Trump administration officials at all levels, the most senior, most levels and mid-levels of the administration, getting together to talk about this challenge, to talk about the ex-president's corrosive influence on our politics, but also to talk about actually doing something about it, not just talking about it, not just signing statements, but getting out there and having what I call electoral effects. It was a good conversation. It was a productive conversation, and one I think is going to lead to actions that the former president should be worried about. But John, at the top end, you said the operative word, and that is the midterms. This isn't just about stopping Donald Trump from running for president in 2024, which I think a lot of people who previously worked for him in his administration are worried about. They're worried about the impact that would have on our democracy. But one of the best paths to stopping Donald Trump in 2024 is doing something in 2022. So that's why our organization, the Renew America movement, pulled this group together for a conversation. We merely acted as the conveners to try to get some of these ex-officials talking about ways to put roadblocks in front of Donald Trump's political plan.
Well, without violating any confidences and understanding that you want to keep, you're not going to want to tell us everything that happened in the meeting, although we could talk off camera a little later. You can tell me all of this stuff off the record. Just talk about what some of those roadblocks could be. Let's speak in the abstract. Let's speak in the hypothetical. What kinds of things, if you want to slow Donald Trump, the runaway train in the Republican Party, down in the course of the months ahead of now, between now and November, what are the kinds of things you might contemplate that could be effective?
Well, look, John, you have to look at who are the people carrying the mantle of Trumpism while he is not the commander in chief. And those are not just his allies in Congress. Those are his allies down ballot in races and in state offices around the country. And that's something we're going to take a really serious look at. Now, our organization has been focused on going after some of those divider candidates, those more extreme Trump-endorsed congressional candidates around the country. But I think one of the important themes that comes up in these conversations of ex-officials is that we've really got to look down ballot. We've got to look at Secretary of State races. We've got to look at state houses around the country because Donald Trump and his allies are looking to spend in those places. They want to try to pack the state houses and pack key state posts around the country with people who are going to defend his interests. Now, what are his interests? He's indicated his interests are people who are willing to challenge the results of legitimate elections, people who are willing to undertake reforms that are authoritarian in nature, and people who are willing to follow his lead to undermine the democratic process and our institutions. That's what we're working against. So I think it would be really important for former officials to come together, identify some of those crucial races, and try to go weigh in and have a serious impact to keep extremists out of public office. That's what I hope can be done, John, but I'm just one voice of many in that crowd.
Well, it's interesting, Ezra Klein wrote a piece in the New York Times just a couple days ago that talked about how Steve Bannon might have a point. And one of the things that Bannon is focused on right now is on lower level races. Don't focus on money and attention on necessarily the marquee races. Start thinking about the race for dog catcher and the race for people who run county executives at the state level. Do all that sort of stuff. There's another thing, though, it seems to me that you guys can do, which relates to something that happened over the weekend when Mike Rounds, the Republican senator from South Dakota, came out and in what is now a shocking development in the Republican Party, a sitting Republican federal office holder came out and said, yeah, Donald Trump lost in 2020, and his claims of election fraud are ridiculous. Trump called him a jerk. Rounds has now come out just in the last few minutes and says he's standing by his claims that the 2020 election was legitimate. How do you make more? And what can your group do to make more Mike Roundses, at least on this issue, give more Republicans that kind of backbone to basically say the truth and then not back down when Donald Trump calls them names?
Well, isn't it breathtaking that was a headline today, that a sitting Republican senator merely said that the election was legitimate? That's absolutely stunning to me. That is now an extraordinary development in the Republican Party. So you flag a really important issue, which is that you've got to be able to get more people to step forward. Now, I'll tell you this. It first started with the call we had today itself. When I tried to do something similar a year ago, I said to the folks on the call today, it was basically me, a bowl of popcorn, and a couple of people on the Zoom, because folks were scared. They were scared to step forward and actually stand out against the ex-president. Now those numbers are increasing. We're seeing dozens of former administration officials, many of whom have not spoken out publicly, now wanting to be involved in these efforts. The same thing, I hope, will happen in Congress. And the best way to do that is to show that there is strength in numbers. Right now, there is a tribe of the tribeless who are in the Republican Party and opposed to Donald Trump. But the more that people who are on the fence see those ranks grow, the more willing they're going to be to hopping off the fence and joining that movement. So we hope that this will give air cover to more people like Mike Rounds, and not just rhetorically. What we need to do is actually go give real air cover electorally to these individuals, to help them in their races, to protect them when Donald Trump tries to go support their opponents, and that will have an effect, John.